Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. This Republican primary season is shaping up to be an eye-opening one for conservative pro-lifers in seeing how the sausage is made, as Hillary Clinton once told her Wall Street donors at a closed-door fundraising event. We're used to hearing Republican politicians talk a good game about respecting life in the womb and hitting Democrats for supporting murder when it comes to abortion. But then while in office, the vast majority of those same Republicans would refuse to walk the walk they had been talking, aside from some minor little changes to the law that they hoped would keep us, the base, happy. Well, until Roe fell last summer. You see, as perplexing as it sounds, too many Republican politicians actually really liked Roe for the simple fact that it allowed them great rhetorical range. They could decry abortion in all sorts of ways, waxing eloquently against it, all the while knowing there wasn't a whole lot they could do on the issue because Roe acted as a glass ceiling restricting abortion bans to narrowly defined outcomes. Republicans liked that arrangement because they could satisfy the base by telling them what they wanted to hear without actually having to worry that the base would demand that they get into a nasty political brawl with Democrats on the issue by making real change. I mean, look at the fact that it took until Alabama elected Tommy Tuberville, a senator, to even give the appearance of a fight. He's simply blocking mass military confirmation votes until the Pentagon scraps its new abortion policies, and he's telling Democrats to just go cry about it. Why didn't Republicans do that before? Seriously, why did so many of them vote to confirm monsters like, say, Merrick Garland? I don't care if they want to say that it was inevitable and there's a certain push and pull when it comes to political support, making the sausage, in other words. Biden's DOJ under Garland just got 3 pro-lifers, ages 41, 73, and 74, convicted for handing out flyers and other peaceful actions to dissuade women at an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C., where the head abortionist has been caught on undercover video by Live Action talking about leaving babies who survive his abortions to die. And then to boot, over 100 dead babies were found in boxes outside his clinic, marked for pickup by an energy company, and at least 5 of those babies were late term and appeared to show signs of having been born alive. And yet it's these sweet old pro-lifers who get locked up for blocking clinic access, the FACE Act, they say, when they made sure to not block access to the clinic. Yeah, anyway, here they are now facing up to 11 years in prison at sentencing. This should make you mad, and it should make you pray harder than you ever have before. It should make you even madder to know that McConnell and a bunch of other Republicans voted to confirm Garland as he goes on a rampage against pro-lifers while pretending there was no grand leftist scheme to intimidate Supreme Court justices outside their houses before Roe was overturned last year, after that draft document was illegally leaked. But like I said, listen to how the Republican primary contenders are talking about abortion now that Roe is gone and pro-lifers are being persecuted left and right. The base wants action. We want abortion bans and personhood amendments. But now that such agenda items could actually happen, many Republicans are getting cold feet about it. They'd rather keep such talk in the world of fantasy and rhetoric. I hit Nikki Haley all the time. I hit her hard even the other week for saying that we already won the abortion fight because it got kicked back down to the states where she says it belongs. And that's the best we can hope for. The slang we're hearing from a lot of Republicans these days on the campaign trail. But I say no, not even close to victory. But sadly, now that the man who gave us the overturning of Roe by making it part of his litmus test for Supreme Court nominees is using the very issue itself to beat his political opponent as being too extreme in his support for the unborn during a Sunday interview with NBC's Kristen Welker. Take a listen.
If a federal ban landed on your desk, if you were reelected, would you sign it at 15
weeks? Are you
weeks?
talking about a complete ban?
A ban at 15 weeks.
Well, people are starting to think of 15 weeks. That seems to be a number that people are talking about right now.
Would you sign that?
I would sit down with both sides and I'd negotiate something, and we'll end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years. I'm not going to say I would or I wouldn't. I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that
I
goes
think what
too
he
far?
did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake.
A terrible thing and a terrible mistake. Yeah, because you know how much I like Trump and want to see him as the nominee, but that's why we need to offer fraternal corrections as Jesus exhorts us to do. No free passes. Join us now to discuss is Shawn Carney, the president and CEO of 40 Days for Life. Shawn, thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me back. I like the fraternal correction phrase in this context.
Well, thank you. I would also, since you heard some of my thoughts, I do want to hear what your thoughts are on that clip we just saw. I mean, it was getting a lot of traction online this weekend. I mean, it was really heartbreaking actually to hear, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and full disclosure, I was an early Trumper. Like before he announced, we had him down here for an event in April of 2015, and so I think he's one of the greatest presidents ever. He's by far the most pro-life president ever, and it's not even close. This was stupid. And he has now joined the many Republicans who are sort of walking around as if we're supposed to apologize for the Supreme Court correcting their error after we wanted them to do so in overturning Roe. And they just seem embarrassed that Roe v. Wade was overturned. Not one of them's looked into the camera, I guess besides Pence, and said, this is one of the greatest days in the history of our country. The Supreme Court corrected their error. This is the only thing Donald Trump will not take credit for. It is mind-boggling. I've watched him over the last year not take credit for the overturning of Roe v. Wade and instead alienate the pro-lifers who elected him. Look, I thought that Trump was going to do what he said he did with the Supreme Court, but there's no doubt that the death of Justice Scalia was a huge factor in getting him elected, because so many people who said, I can't stand Donald Trump, I'm Catholic or I'm Baptist or I'm pro-life, I don't believe him, that pushed them over the edge because the court was so important. He was elected by pro-life Americans, and now he's alienating them. I don't know why. I think it was very, very dumb.
It is, and I wonder what his advisors are telling him behind the scenes, because I know 2024, I'm already just assuming he'll be the Republican nominee, but of course that's going to be a big fight. But let's just say it's a Trump-Biden rematch. We know the national security state. We know everything he'll be up against with the fortified rigged election of 2020. It'll just be that, but again on steroids in 24. So I wonder if the advisors in his ear are saying, well, when it comes to abortion, a lot of people on the left and right are with you on late-term abortion, but then when it's earlier, 15 weeks and earlier, that's where even some Republicans, they get wobbly in their knees, they kind of lose their own spine, and they go, well, maybe, and then exceptions start coming into play, and you name it. So I wonder if he's thinking, well, I'm up against the law in 24, need to broaden out the coalition. But I mean, CPAC made the same fatal flaw a year or two ago, that when they tried to expand the 10, what did they do? They didn't just expand the 10, they kicked pro-lifers off the main stage, and they made that a point to say, well, there's going to be a lot more liberal-minded folks who are going to be attending and speaking at the event. We didn't want to turn them off by hitting too hard on abortion. And every time it's the pro-lifers who seem to get thrown under the bus. And that's the fatal flaw of Republicans time and time again. They think to win broader parts of America, they need to speak kind of with a forked tongue on abortion, pro-lifer in some sense, but then also with exceptions on the other side. But what they don't realize, let's look at the left with all the wildly unpopular social policies that they force on us. They just force it from the top down. And sometimes we Republicans, we don't play ball in the same way. We just go, well, the polls say this or that, and we're too afraid to stand for our convictions. Look at what the left's been able to do with falsehoods like the trans movement, late-term abortion, the rest. Just imagine if we actually spoke truthfully and we just kept up, we just circled the wagons and we kept saying, no, all life is precious from conception. I don't care what the polls say right now. In 10, 15 years, that can change because we need to be that change. Is that the kind of rhetoric you need to see Republicans saying more so?
Absolutely. And by the way, it worked in 2022. The wobbly, wussy Republicans who were terrified of abortion lost handedly, and they should have in 2022. Who owned it? DeSantis won on a landslide. Governor Kemp in Georgia. Governor Abbott, where I live in Texas. We had an abortion ban. We had a trigger law. And he allocated $150 million of our surplus for single women who choose life. He won in a landslide. So the Republicans that own the abortion issue on the side of life win. And the ones who look like they don't know what they're talking about, which is what Trump looked like, which a lot of them look like at the debate, it's a loser. It's a loser, and I think they should be worried about pro-life voter turnout. That's not getting talked about enough. Some pro-lifers who aren't very engaged just think, well, Roe ended abortion across the country. I don't really, that was my issue, and I'm not going to vote for president this year. They need to motivate their base, all of them. I think what Trump did, it's not only ignorant because it's just inaccurate, it's bad philosophically and politically, but he then highlighted what the good that DeSantis did, which was awesome. And I think DeSantis is a great governor and will be a good president. But, they highlighted the heartbeat bill, which is very popular in Florida, which is based on science, which is popular across the country. We have 23 states that are abortion-free or close to being abortion-free. Despite what we heard in the Republican debate, everybody thinks this is some big loser at the state level, and it's not.
No, you're exactly right. And also, where the heartbeat law was first enacted in Texas, I think that it saved, I saw some reports saying it could be as many as 10,000 babies at this point. I mean, it's something that really does save lives, and it's such a positive step forward to finally getting to personhood, because it gets us to around 5 or 6 weeks. And hopefully we can close that gap to say, no, all life since conception until natural death, is just as human as you and I, just as alive as you and I, needs to be protected as such. So it moves the ball forward. So for that to be the wedge issue for some Republican candidates right now saying, oh, that's extreme, using rhetoric saying it's extreme, it's terrible. It's just using the left's playbook. It's just reinforcing those tropes and those stereotypes that we're constantly having to fight from the left. So I just think whatever advisors are in his ear are really, really missing the mark on this when they're going to tick off way too much of the base. They're not going to win any pro-abortions. It's just pro-abortionists. It's just a lose-lose. And like I said, we're talking about babies here. We can't be bartering and negotiating when it comes to babies, saying, oh, I hear what you're saying, lefties, but how about I give you 5 abortions, 10 abortions? How many abortions? We can work this. No, you can't, piece and parse like that when it comes to human lives. Before I let you go tonight, instead of getting into some of what Welker on NBC, I know she reiterated a lot of lies that, oh, these abortion bans that are coming since Roe, it's getting women killed, they can't get the care they need. That's all lies. So instead, I'd like to close out here with this last minute or so about those pro-lifers that are being convicted. The ones in D.C. who are protesting around the Surgery abortion clinic, a late-term abortion clinic, a notorious one. And again, the clinic's not getting investigated. It's these nice, friendly pro-lifers. They're the ones getting the boot, and then the party's almost stabbing them in the back by not standing with them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and at the same time, this abortion doctor got acquitted today for running over our volunteer in Michigan. That happened today as well. And yet they're looking, obviously, to put these people in federal prison for up to 11 years. They're clearly not a harm to society. They charge them with violating the FACE Act. It's very sketchy on all the details. You get different reports of what they did or they didn't do. But this is a theme, an unfortunate theme, and a recent theme that our DOJ is bigoted towards pro-life Americans. They're bigoted towards Catholics. And it's not because we have conspiracy theories. It's because they've showed us the evidence where that's very, very clear. We have Mark Houck, who's the 40 Days for Life volunteer, at his house raided by the FBI. And it's just out of control. It's out of control. And this is yet another example. And we work closely with the DOJ and the FBI for many years. And just like a light switch went off a year ago, and all of a sudden they started targeting us. And it can only be because of bigotry or their hatred for our pro-life beliefs.
Well, Shawn, as always, keep up the great fight. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.